On tonight's episode, we're going to talk about ET48.3 and
we also do some drifting. Thunder out there.
It knows this show is
coming. Episode 20 is
here.
Struck lightning.
No, welcome.
Episode 23.
Episode 23.
Urge Weekly.
Oh,
Urge Weekly.
no. It's the Ultra RC Hobbies show. Everyone knows that.
Welcome, episode 53.
53. Ultra RC Hobbies show.
Yes.
He's Chris.
Aaron.
Yeah, so today's going to be a little bit of a different episode. We got lots of footage from the rebuild of Evan's ET48.3. So it's all back together other than some shocks. We have lots of good pro tips, lots of good info on the rebuild on this bad boy. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's just been too darn cold to go do anything. So we're probably going to throw some drift footage in here. At least keep it a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
Not so boring.
My stuff's all broken.
Yeah, my UDR is broken too.
Maybe my faithful hobby shop to get the parts.
Yeah, working on it. So we're just going to get right into it. So, yeah. Should we go get some drift footage?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've been building Evan's Tekno ET48.3 for the last couple weeks now. So as you can see, it's pretty much together. We're just missing some shocks.
Sway bars work good.
Yep. Yeah, Chris says it's A-okay.
It's A-okay.
Yeah, Mr. Mechanic.
Just need some shocks.
Yeah.
I was going to say that, but you said it way before me.
I know, man. I'm fast. I'm on the ball today.
And tires.
And tires. But I got all that set up. So, I got some pro tips. We also have a whole bunch of time-lapse footage, but more pro tips, more stuff to keep your race program running smooth for this upcoming race season. So check out the footage.
Check it out.
next up on the rebuild list is the center differential. So I was kind of feeling this before I started to take it apart, and it's chunky. So we're going to check the bearings. So there's a front bearing and a rear bearing, and then we're also going to refill this bad boy up with some diff oil. So now this is where it becomes pretty important to keep good solid notes. So on there you can see it said 10 on it. So normally what that would mean is we would have 10,000 diff oil in there. But looking back through our booklet of what we've set up for this build previous, we have all of our setup sheets. So the starting setup that we have in it actually says we put 15 in there. So we're gonna have to make sure we wipe that number 10 off and make sure that we actually figure out what we're gonna run, if it's 15 or maybe go a little bit lower to like 12.5. But the biggest thing is, this is why you keep really good setup notes. So when you go back and rebuild your car after you did some changes, you can say, hey, you know, I started with 20 and this started at 20 at round 3 May 2018. So it started at 20, then we knocked it down to 15. So we would have put 10 in there and the car would have been really aggressive. It would have turned really good off power, and it would have been really hard to drive, especially in a loose condition like when we go down to Chilliwack. So that's a good reason to keep really good notes on shock oils, diff oils, ride heights, tows, cambers. But we're going to be filling a new one of these out, so we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Okay, so you got this diff all torn apart, as you can see. Look at just how black that oil was. So this diff oil, I think, wasn't changed all summer. And if it was, we changed it kind of halfway through. So this is definitely something that you want to change more frequently than not. That spacer still has a bunch of it on there. So it's pretty dark. There wasn't a whole lot of fluid left in there either. So definitely something you want to do a little bit more commonly than not. So I would say every, you know, hour and a half, 2 hours of running, definitely something to check into just to keep your car nice and consistent. But the biggest thing I want to check out here, and I have kind of a little demonstration built, and this will be pro tip number 3. 1, 2, 3. So we have some bearings here that we're holding the diff. So this one's good, right? You can't hear it, doesn't make any noise, sounds really, really good. But the thing that we really want to look for is, let's see if I can get a good angle of this, is going to be the play. So what we're looking for is when we turn it, this one has a very little amount of play in the cage itself. So this bearing would be good. But this bearing, on the other hand, you can hear it. It's really gritty, really gross sounding. But the biggest thing that this bearing has that the other one didn't was, look at how much play this bearing has in it. Just a huge amount of side play. So what that's going to cause is when the diff's inside the car, and that bearing's floating around, this diff case is actually going to be going up and down and kind of floating and moving. So definitely something that you want to look for, and you want to do a little bit more commonly than not. This bearing, no good. Okay? I'll show you what we do to this bearing. Right in the art bin. So this bearing though, this other one, it feels good, rolls good, doesn't have too much side play. That's a keeper, so it's never a bad idea to say take this bearing, put it in your toolbox as a spare, just in case you ever need one. So this is kind of my pro tip. Okay, so we got our diff ready to go back together. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you a couple things that I like to do on all of my differentials when I put them together. So let's take this ring gear here. So we got this, and we got some Tekno black grease. A lot of people make this grease, like Losi makes it, Associated makes it, there's a whole bunch of companies. So this is the spot where the O-ring is going to sit. So what we're going to do is just put a little bead of the black grease inside here where the O-ring sits. Don't want too much because you don't want to make a mess. So let's put a little bit in there. You can drop that O-ring in there, and any excess that pops out, you can just coat the top. So then the next thing that goes on this ring gear is going to be our washer here. I'm going to move this over so it's centered. Is going to be this washer. So normally I put a little bit of the grease on the washer as well. And just a light little coating here. Oh, I'm running out. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And then that just goes flat down there. Tekno also recesses these out drives. So you can see there's a little bit of a dip in it, and what that dip's for is for the O-ring. So Tekno also recommends to put a little bit of grease on this flat spot as well. So we'll just put a light coating on there. Just like that. And then this out drive can go through here. So this is the spur gear's center diff side. Make sure you have your bearing on, because if you put this through and pin it in and you don't have the bearing on, you're going to put it together and you're going to have to take it all apart again, because you can't slide this bearing over the out drive. So make sure you have this bearing on first. Slide her in, drop it down, just like that. Okay, so now you put the pin in, maybe. Make sure we have this O-ring seated all the way. Okay, now you put the pin in. Like so. And then you put top gear on. So now we're going to repeat that step. I'm doing the bottom diff case, so we'll just time lapse that. Okay, so we got all the seals in, got all the ends in, you got the bearings on, so you didn't forget that step. So that's bonus. So now the goal of what we're going to do next is to make sure that all of these side gears, these guys right here, these four, are going to spin freely on the shafts. So on the Teknos, sometimes these little side gears have a little bit too much flashing inside this hole itself. So what'll happen is you put them on the shaft and they bind up and they start scoring this cross shaft. So it's always a good idea just to check that they spin freely. And when you check them, then they can go in the case. So with the first one, you always want to make sure that you have the bevel down. You have the bevel up. So you want to make sure that they can lock together. So this one's going to be bevel up, so it has this cutout in it. This one's going to be bevel down, so it's going to lock together. So this one's first, maybe. I have someone looking over my shoulder, and it's weird. I see him out of the corner of my eye. He's looking at me. Do you ever get the feeling that somebody's watching me? No? Nobody? Okay. So I got that in there. We'll do number 2. Oop. Okay, so they move freely. And remember, this one's bevel down. Just like that. So now this whole diff moves freely. Everybody's happy. Everything's happy. Just like that. So all the gears move freely. So it's time to fill it up with some oil. So we're going to put some Flashpoint 12.5, 12,500 diff oil in this baby. Okay, let's not make a mess. So normally I fill them to where you should initially and let the diff oil sit there and go into all the nooks and crannies. So we'll fill it up and then we're going to give it about 5 minutes or so and then come back and just make sure there's enough diff oil in there. So we'll be right back. Okay, so we got our diff here and the oil level is a little bit low, so we're going to put a little bit more oil in there, but as you can see there's no more air bubbles. So that's kind of what we were waiting for, making sure we get all those air bubbles out. We'll just add a little bit more here. And what we want to do is we want to have the oil just underneath the tops of the gears. So you can just see there's a little bit of a gear exposed there. That's what we want. So roll it, make sure there's no more air underneath these gears. It looks like we are good to go. So now we'll make sure we have this top face cleaned really, really well. So I'm just going to grab another paper towel here. What we're going to do is we're just going to wipe this face clean. Just make sure there's no diff oil that I can leak across. Make sure our seal inside the diff is clean as well. Make sure we got no grease on it or nothing like that. So now we just line up our screw holes and we are in business. just like that. Okay, so now we're gonna get our handy dandy driver out. And you always want to start one first, but not sink it all the way. I normally leave about 5 or 6 threads out, and then what we'll do is we'll get all of the screws in here. So, 2 more. And I always like to work at a cross pattern, so we'll do that one first, this one, and then do the other opposite side. And then I'll get all the screws started, and then what we'll do is we'll work and just slowly tighten them all the same amount here. So, and I'll do the rest of them just by hand, just to make sure. So let's get this one snug now. So the goal of doing this is just to make sure that you get this ring gear on as level and flat as possible. Make sure you don't have it cockeyed or crooked, because I have seen that before, and then you get a really uneven diff, or you actually can start stripping out gears, and shimming them becomes kind of a mess. So we'll just slowly keep going around just till they're snug. Now what we'll do is we'll just check it. Nice and smooth. Snug it up just a smidge more. Just make sure they're all snug. And there we go. Nice and smooth Tekno diff. Wipe all the excess oil off there. It's clean, ready to go. So we're gonna get this started to be installed here in the center diff and then on the chassis. So the chassis is all cleaned, ready to go. So that's step number 2. Okay, so we got side plates in, left and the right. We have our center diff in there, the one that we just built. So now it's time to get into the front suspension and front diff. So one thing is, if you're just gonna do some maintenance in between races, never a bad idea to check out your inner hinge pins. These normally can get pretty bent, and the arms can have quite a bit of play in them. So the easiest way to check these is roll them on a piece of glass. And then look at the level of the glass, and you'll see either they're straight or they have a bow and they wobble. So that's what the easiest way to check these. But if you look at this arm, this hole right here should be just round. But as you can see, it's pretty oval. So the issue with this is this arm has a whole bunch of slop in it. And it's going to be hard to set your camber and your toe when that arm is able to move left and right, up and down. It kind of is all over the map. So this is something we are going to replace. And it's always a good idea when you do replace them to, say, ream the arms out, make sure the hinge pins are going to flow through them evenly. But we'll replace them. We'll show you how we ream them. And then we'll show you what we do if these hinge pins are good or not, how we fix them back up and get them like new again. So something you always want to check too on the nitros, whether it's the front or the rear, is always your out drive on the rear or front pinion. So it's just held on by a little grub screw, and I'm currently holding the pinion with my thumb. So the issue is, this is supposed to be solid, right? This is supposed to turn with the drive shaft, and the pinion's supposed to turn the same amount as this cup. But the issue is, when your grub screw loosens off, you shouldn't have this much play in this drive. So the issue with this is, we'll grab the screwdriver here and we'll take this off. But I mean, it's going to take a very small, grab the right screwdriver. It's not going to take much for this baby to come off. So we're going to do like a turn, and that pops it off. So the issue with this is it kind of will actually start wearing down your pinion and break your pinion. Just because the grub screw is going to be hammering out the flat edges on that pinion. You can kind of see it just has a flat spot for it to ride on. So the issue with that is you can actually damage and wreck your pinion just from that grub screw pounding out those edges. And the issue also is now you have float with your pinion. So the pinion can actually come inside and out of the case, and you can actually start ramming the pinion gear into the diff case itself. That's not the case on this one, but you can see it's been really, really close. You can tell right where the pinion edge is and where it's pushed all the grease out. So we got really lucky catching this, but this issue right here can be the difference between winning a race and not finishing a race. You know, these nitro buggies, e-buggies, e-truggies, nitro truggies, they don't work very well two-wheel drive. That center diff does not like it, and you'll just diff out to the diff with the least resistance, which would be the front or the rear, depending on if your drive cup has fallen off. So this has happened to me once or twice, so you want to be kind of careful with it, but good thing we caught it just doing the rebuild. So this is definitely something you want to check before every race. You want to use, honestly, we use red Loctite on these. It's about the only thing in RC that we use red Loctite on, and we will also heat this up with a heat gun if we do need to take it off, just so we don't strip out this little set screw. The nice thing with these grub screws on the Tekno though is they are a 2.5 millimeter driver, so they are a 4 mil grub screw, so they can take some abuse with using like a red Loctite. But again, if you're going to use red on this, make sure you heat it up before you take it out, or you will strip that grub screw if you just go and start reefing on it. I've seen it happen a couple times, so heat's going to be your best friend. So this is a pro tip, and this is going to save you from winning a race or losing a race. So hopefully you're going to win lots of races now because your drive cups aren't going to fall off. That's the goal. I mean, you do you. So going through the hinge pin stuff and checking your hinge pins. So we ended up putting a new set of arms on Evan's ET48. So I've reamed this hinge pin out, and what we use is actually a chainsaw file, an 8x5/32 chainsaw file. And what we do is we put that in the drill and we spin it. So what we want to achieve is we want pretty much zero resistance, right? So the way we do that is we ream out that hole and that hinge pin drops right through the arm. So the issue with the factory arms here is when we try that, we can't even get the hinge pin the majority of the way through the arm before it hits this hard section. And it's super hard to push through. So the goal of what we want to do here is we want to get the arm to move freely like we have the first one. So we'll take our drill and our file here, and we'll just give it a good little ream out. Okay, bang out, give it a good blow, make sure there's nothing in there, and then just test it. So we loosened it up a little bit, but it's usually, what we found lately is, usually when you put the droop screw in, it will expand the plastics a little bit, and that's pretty much exactly where we're hitting, is right where that droop screw is. So we just need to knock that high spot off, so we'll ream it again. Flip it over to the other side. Okay, take two. So it's getting a little bit looser. Still on the tight side, so just a little bit more of a ream. And you can see all the gunk flying out of there. So yeah, we're almost there. Just a little bit more of a high spot. just like that. So we got them nice and free. They move freely. So what we'll see here is when we put this on the car, this is what we want to see. So we have all of our hinge pin inserts in there already. Right in there. I'll get this together quickly and show you. So what we want to see here and what we want to achieve, so when you put these screws in and lock this D block down, this would be the same if you were building the front end and you wanted to lock the A block down. Exact same thing. Oh, that was our issue. It's going too fast. How about I flip it?
Upside down.
Upside down, roundabout. Pert near. What he said.
You don't know what that means, bro.
So you can't have nice things.
It's like big car racing.
Just like big car racing. Okay, so we'll lock this down. Okay, so this is what we want to see. When we hold this sway bar up, we want to see these arms being able to drop and move freely. So that's the goal. So if we didn't remount that hinge pin, essentially what would happen is this arm would be really sticky and it wouldn't give us a nice free-flowing suspension. And the issue with that is, like I said on the previous video, you'll get the huckabuck action, the rear end won't be stable, or the front end, whatever was end is binding. And the issue with that is trying to build a shock package around your truck bouncing around just because you have an actual bind instead of the suspension moving freely like it should. It's really hard to figure out what you need to do, especially when it's not doing it all the time. So that's what you really want to look for when you are putting new arms on it, whether you're replacing arms, whether you're just checking to see if all your stuff's good and free moving. That's definitely something you want to check out. So thanks for watching.
Gear mesh. It's good.
It's good. Okay, thanks. Thanks for double checking my work, boss.
Yes, no problem, buddy.
Okay, so this was episode 53 of the Ultra RC Hobby Show. Don't forget to follow him on Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat. I beat him to it this time, so we're just throwing a wrench in the plans.
Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe.
Don't forget to share with all your friends on Facebook.
Check us out on Facebook.
There.
Yeah.
But-
And YouTube.
That's kind of ironic.
And
man.
Instagram.
You just kind of blew my mind a little
And
bit.
Snapchat.
Yeah. And don't forget to check out our website.
And our website.
www.ultrarchobbies.com. So thank you for watching. If you haven't yet picked your prize up from episode 52,
Come do it.
come do it. Message us. Get in contact. I've tried messaging a couple people and nobody messaged me back. So, I mean, it's not a scam. I'm not trying to scam people. I just want people to come pick up their prizes.
We got some free stuff for you.
Yeah, and then go support all of the awesome businesses that supported us for the giveaway. So thank you for watching, and we will catch you on the next one. Bye.